Hi, everybody, and thank you all for being here. I'm Alex Giannini, the Associate Program Director at the Westport Library, and it is my honor to welcome you all for what promises to be an unforgettable evening with sports broadcasting legend James Brown. But before we begin, just a quick note. If you have a question for James, please type it in the Q&A feature below, and we'll do our best to get to it throughout the evening. James Brown is the host of the NFL Today on CBS and Inside the NFL on Showtime. A three-time Emmy Award-winning network broadcaster, Brown, who was elected into the Sports Broadcasting Hall of Fame in August 2020, has hosted the Super Bowl record-tying 9 times. In 2010, SI.com named Brown the best studio host of the decade. He's a special correspondent for CBS News and contributes to programs such as 60 Minutes, CBS This Morning, CBS Evening News, and 48 Hours. He's also a founding partner of Major League Baseball's 2019 World Series champion Washington Nationals. And tonight, I'm hoping he's going to reassure me that I don't have to watch Tom Brady celebrate another Super Bowl win in a couple of weeks. Jeff Pegues is also a 3-time Emmy winner and the CBS News Chief Justice and Homeland Security correspondent. Since joining CBS News, Jeff has led the network's coverage of some of the biggest stories of the last decade, including the riot at the nation's capital on January 6th. Jeff has also become one of the preeminent journalists on the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. His most recent book, Compromat: How Russia Undermined American Democracy, investigates how Russian President Vladimir Putin's hackers poked into U.S. voter databases and what is happening now to shore up election systems in states across the country. Jeff is a proud graduate of Miami University of Ohio, where he's a scholarship football player and a starting wideout. In January 2020, he was named to the Miami University Board of Trustees. And with that, it is such an honor to welcome Jeff Pegues and James Brown.
Alex, thank you very much for that introduction. And JB, so good to see you, my friend.
Wow, Jeff, I'm going to have to take charge of this interview, given all that I just heard Alex read about you and the Board of Trustees. Wow, congratulations, buddy.
Oh, thank you. It is an honor. But what is also an honor, of course, is interviewing you. This is a busy time for you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us virtually, because I wanted to introduce my friends in Westport, Connecticut to you and to your insight into what is upcoming with this Super Bowl. Tom Brady, as Alex mentioned, in another Super Bowl. You know, I was picking the Pack this past weekend, the Green Bay Packers. I was hoping that they would win, in part because I worked in Milwaukee for about 2.5 years. But you just cannot bet against Tom Brady. It really is incredible what he's accomplished.
You know what, Jeff? And I've been blessed to be around a long time. As a matter of fact, Alex hinted at that. Anytime you hear the word legendary in an introduction, isn't that the most polite word for old? Sometimes they'll say veteran, legendary career. But anyway, I've seen a lot. I've been blessed to see a lot of great sporting events, championship events, and clearly Hall of Fame players through a number of sports globally. Tom Brady has earned everything that is said about him. And in terms of accomplishments, I kind of compare him to what Bill Russell did. And I'm saying this for the first time because I've never said that on TV before. When people talk about the greatest basketball player ever, many will say, well, Michael Jordan is. He was the most creative, acrobatic. Yes, 6 championships, I get it. But Bill Russell, 9 out of 11 championships. You know, he was a player coach. If you judge it by championships, Bill Russell's the best of all time. Tom Brady, while he may not be that naturally gifted athlete, Jeff, you as a football player would know, there is no doubting that he is superb at all that he's done. 10 times in a Super Bowl, and you look at some of the iconic names that maybe have gone to 4 or 5, Tom Brady has earned everything and every accolade there is said about him.
Yeah, it really is incredible. What do you think, based on what you've seen over the years, what do you think sets him apart?
You know what? Great question. And earlier today, I was blessed to be interviewing Peyton Manning about another effort, if you will. Derek Jeter was a part of that as well, too. And when I think about athletes of that ilk, if you will, Jeff, it is really good, old-fashioned, hard work. It's really as simple as that. Because when I think about Peyton Manning, again, not the most gifted athlete. You don't think about an elusive runner with good feet when you think about Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning type. They are absolutely the kinds who were grunts, who would go in and absorb as much film, if you will, video, digital, looking at it, so that they were a leader and one step ahead of the competition. Great chess players. There was nothing you could fool them with because the homework had been done, which also says to young people that there is nothing that supplants preparation. And that's what those guys did. Tom Brady, if they're looking to blitz him, he'll burn you because he's seen it all. If they don't blitz him and give him time, he's going to pick you apart because he knows where the weakness is going to show up. So that's what really separates them. And talk about Joe Cool under pressure. You know what? When guys, and I talked to Ndamukong Suh, the outstanding defensive lineman for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, to get some insight from him in terms of what Tom Brady brings to the table. And you hear words like their championship discipline, and you know that they've seen it all. And if they're calm under pressure, then you know what? They firmly believe that the game isn't over until the clock hits all zeros.
There's really nuance. And frankly, I know there are probably a lot of New England Patriots, Tom Brady fans listening to us, but I don't want to spend too much time talking about Tom Brady. My question is, there's a lot of nuance in how he plays, right? Because I wonder, would you describe him as a quarterback who can dominate a game, or does he just make his teammates better by putting them in the right position to get them the ball to score?
Jeff Pegues, and again, because I would defer to you because you played football. I did not. Of course, I understand the sport. Basketball was mine. I think it's a little bit of both. When you think when he was with New England, look at the number of players who may not have been the best fit with other teams. Some might even call them malcontents. When they got to New England, because of that Bill Belichick, Tom Brady aura, if you will, they blended in. They followed everything to a T there. So can he dominate the game? Yes, because how many coaches will tell you that they schemed against Tom Brady by trying not to get the ball back into his hands when they're within striking distance or not very far behind in the closing minutes of the game? That's dominating the game because, like precision, they would get it done and execute extremely well. Making the teammates better, you better believe it. Those guys, they practiced till they had it down pat. These weren't guys that, if you looked at in the wide receiving core, many of whom he worked with over that course in New England, who would scare you individually. Randy Moss, different story. Wes Welker, awesome route runner. People of that ilk, yes. But by and large, he didn't have a predominant of those kind of players. Even when Antonio Brown was there, they were going to be sensational because they knew Tom Brady was the leader. So I think it's effectively a combination of both dominance and execution with Tom Brady. And look at what he's doing with all the parts he's got there in Tampa.
Well, you are so modest, and it just speaks to your character. And that's one reason why I wanted to interview you tonight. We've known each other for 8 years, the 8 years since I've been at CBS News. And I remember the first time you walked into the newsroom, and of course, I'm a big fan of yours. I didn't know if you knew who I was at that time, but I was a big fan of yours. But you came up to me and you told me that you did know who I was and that you were watching, what I was doing on television every night. And so you made me feel special. That's the kind of guy that you are. Have you always been that kind of guy who's sort of looking at other people and trying not to be the center of attention yourself?
Wow, superb question. Hey, Jeff, and I've certainly grown to be that way. Yes, it was even in the family environment because I'm the oldest of 5. My mother and father, God bless them, were hardworking types, high school graduates, but I like to say they had PhDs in determination and common sense. And like most parents, they want their kids to do better in the game of life than they did. My mother was the homemaker. My father was out working the 2 or 3 jobs. I say he's kind of like Joseph in the Bible. You didn't hear much about him. You heard all the talk about Mary, and my mother's name was Mary, Mary Ann, as a matter of fact. But he was always there for the important occasions. They made it crystal clear that educational excellence was the key to success in the game of life, which is why, even though I was blessed, 80 pounds lighter and a pretty good basketball player, high school All-America, the whole 9 yards, to be sought after by over a couple hundred colleges. But my mother said academic excellence. And I was thinking, Bill Bradley was a hero of mine. He was playing at Princeton University when I was in high school. And I'm thinking, my gosh, Princeton is advancing in the NCAA tournament. So truly, you can marry academics and athletics. Heavens, if I can get into a good school, that's what I want to do. And I saw the letter sitting on my high school coach's desk from Harvard. I said, if I can get in, that's where I want to go. Had I seen a letter from Princeton, that's where I would have gone, but I went to Harvard instead. But in that family of 5, I knew I had the responsibility to set the standard, if you will. And so I was the leader in terms of the kids in the family, but it was always about them. And certainly, having played team sports like you, it is about the team, everybody doing their job. I know there's an example that really has resonated with me. And again, from the Bible, where it talks about every joint supplies. It talks about the human body being comprised of many different parts, but every part of the body plays a crucial role, if you will, in the fervent, effectual working of the whole body. So I certainly didn't know that when I was a kid, but I got to learn that as well, too. And of course, in my post-athletic career, working in television, I've always been a part of studio shows or broadcast teams. So it is about the group. And my job was always to make others look good. There's an expression that really has stuck with me, and it says, in lowliness of mind, esteem others more highly than yourself. And if you do that and you play to their strengths, then we all win.
Well, and you've done that well over the years at the NFL Today and Fox before that. And this is going to be your 10th time hosting a Super Bowl pregame show. Now, you mentioned earlier you've talked to Peyton and you've talked to Derek Jeter. Are they going to be a part of the program in some way?
No, actually, when I was talking with them and a young lady who is the most decorated boxer ever, male or female, 25 years of age, Clarissa Shields is her name. I mean, amazing. Her amateur record was 77-1. She's never lost in the pros. She got 9 titles in 3 different weight classes, and now she's moving into mixed martial arts. I mean, awesome. So the 3 of them were excellent. We were actually promoting an effort by an organization called Gen Youth, which provides food nationwide through all of their partners for those who are food challenged, entitled to breakfast and lunch at school. And obviously in this COVID environment, it's exacerbated the problem. And they lent their personalities, their hero status, if you will, to this effort called A Taste of the NFL, one of the many things that occurred there, but to get companies around the country to match funds in this push to raise food for those food challenged out there. And they're all very philanthropic in what they do. So that's what that was about. But no, the football show, hey, look, we've got a lot on board for that. It's almost like a 24-hour pregame show, but we hope we've got some good things lined up, Jeff.
That is an all-day thing, isn't it? I think we turn on the TV on Super Bowl Sunday at, 6 o'clock in the morning these days.
Absolutely.
So what are you going to be on throughout the day, or how is the lineup shaking out? Unless maybe they don't even have it yet, but how is the lineup shaking up?
I'm glad you gave me that caveat there, because you know TV well. We're actually going to have a meeting tomorrow to go through all of the elements of the show, but there's some Super Bowl programming that leads into the pregame show, and I would assume we're going to be on around 2 o'clock in the afternoon and go till 6. and then, of course, hand it over to the game guys, Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, and Tracy Wolfson to do that. So we will be covering a lot, recognizing that it's the largest audience for a one-day sporting event in America. I think the Indianapolis 500 might claim a little bit of bragging rights in that regard as well. So we will have a lot.
How many? You think 100 million people?
Oh, yes, 100 million plus. 100 million plus, especially when you factor in the global audience, Armed Forces Network, et cetera. So, I mean, that's a humongous number, to say the least. So we want to try to appeal to as many as possible. And I guess if I were to succinctly state it, it will be to have something for everyone, recognizing you've got a lot of casual fans. As a matter of fact, when I mentioned those three excellent athletes that were a part of this fundraising effort, it was for a taste of the NFL, where you've got, chefs from around the country participating in this, and everybody gets to sample some of the outstanding fare. So we've got something for everyone. And the thing is, we're trying to build the audience toward the game. We start to become more football centric as we get closer to kickoff time, but we will set the stage in a very elementary fashion for what the audience should be looking for in the way of storylines, headlines, great stories of individuals building toward the game, Jeff.
And did the NFL today make it through the season without a COVID scare?
You know what? That's absolutely remarkable. Viacom CBS did a sensational job of putting in protocol, and the leaders of each side of the house, but of course the parent and the big daddy, Viacom, they had parameters, protocols in place we had to adhere to. I got tested twice a week. There were times it might have been more than that if we happened to be out on assignment. And we have been very fortunate. The fact that we got in an entire football season, I think it's some 256 games. So the league certainly was a party to that as well, without even in a scare. But out of an abundance of caution, I recall that we were in another studio show, and one of the people in the studio tested positive the day after we were in a studio. And although we weren't near that person, those of us on inside the NFL on Showtime, obviously a part of the Viacom CBS family, out of an abundance of caution, Phil Simms and myself, for the NFL Today show on Sunday, we stayed home and did the broadcast from our home studios, again, out of an abundance of caution and several COVID tests. And thank God we both have been negative and throughout the season.
You bring up Phil Simms. So what I see when I watch that broadcast is Phil and Boomer sort of jawing at each other. Is that real, or is that just something they do for TV?
Jeff, you've been in more football locker rooms than me, and you know that there's an element of reality and truth in that, because it's the competitive nature of the game with athletes. So yes, it's rooted in reality, but there is tremendous professional respect. Phil Simms, look, he's not happy unless he's unhappy. Number two, he just liked to shoot jabs. At our NFL seminar every year, when he would get up to give his thoughts on the upcoming season, half of his presentation was taking everybody, including executives, to task. And he finally got to the substance. But that's what fires him up. And as you well know, Jeff, in the course of a long football season, the challenges associated with such, you need that kind of person there. He keeps us all. But there's nobody who's better prepared than Phil Simms. He does his homework. Jim, heavens, you and I, Jeff, would call somebody who's in the gym all the time working on their game a gym rat. He is a gym rat in the sense that he watches everything. Film galore. I'm still calling it film, but you know what I'm saying. But he is on top of the game. He knows the game inside and out, and he has earned Bill Cowher's respect, our Hall of Fame football coach, 15 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers, 8 times a division champ. They went to 2 conference championships, and he won a Super Bowl. Bill Cowher loves the game and respects the game, and he and Phil can go at it on the deepest levels because they know it. But so can our colleagues. Nate Burleson, 11 years in the NFL, multi-talented, versatile, and he's showing that now in that his second act in broadcasting is going to be even better than his first act. And Boomer Esiason, a league MVP, 14 years in the league, an outstanding quarterback. And of course, I call him king of media in New York because his simulcast radio/TV show is #1 in that market in the mornings and has been for years.
It's a really great ensemble, and it's even with the introduction of Nate, it just seems so familiar watching those guys, and you lead them. Again, you're the quarterback of that group.
You know what? But it's a lot of fun, and what's fun for me is to learn the strengths and the weaknesses of each. And as an effective host, which I hope and aim to be every week in and week out, is to maximize their strengths. Look, the pregame show, just like if you're doing an inauguration special or CBS News special with all of your contacts, that part is structured. I'm sure when you get on site for the live events that you cover, that brings with it some angst in a positive sense, because it really taps into all the experience that you've had as an Emmy Award-winning correspondent and host and reporter. That brings out the best in you as you're reacting to what's taking place live. That's what I love about being in the studios. When we get to the games, or this time of the year, when we go through the playoffs, and now the big payoff is the Super Bowl. It's the fun, it's the best unscripted show on television, because you have no idea what's going to happen. You need to be well prepared to be able to amplify on the subtleties of the sport that you played for the audience that's watching.
Yeah, talk about being prepared. This has been one of those years where I'm sure you've had to be prepared, hosting the NFL Today and everything else that you do in your professional life. When we talk about George Floyd, when we talk about COVID, but let's talk about George Floyd and social justice issues and how that has affected the NFL this season. Have you made it a point to talk about your opinion on these issues during the show, or is that something that you've stayed away from?
I think it's important for me only if the show or the circumstance, most importantly, not the show, if the circumstance brings that about. I rarely delve into that to inject my own opinion or thoughts, but if the situation, if events and circumstances lend themselves to it, I do not shy away from that. Case in point, our first Thursday night football game, when we had that franchise at CBS, it just so happened to be a game that was coming and originating out of Baltimore, the Baltimore Ravens. And I'm not even sure who the opponent was, but it was on the heels of the unfortunate situation involving their star running back, Ray Rice, and his then girlfriend, then fiance, now wife, Janae. So it was an issue that the country was talking about. Your division, CBS News, it was a lead story in that, or one of the block A stories, certainly no less than B at the time that it was hitting. So Scott Pelley, the anchor then of CBS News, he dealt with it on our Thursday night broadcast. He led off the broadcast. Nora O'Donnell, who is now the CBS News anchor, she was in Baltimore, bringing folks up to date on the news elements of that story. And then with me being blessed to host the broadcast, yes, I dealt with it. And I had a commentary to offer only because I have been working in a number of the cause-related efforts that I cherish so much, highlighting food insecurity. In this case, it was working with AARP. It was with Verizon Foundation, working with them, and what was a key element they were involved in raising the awareness of the level of domestic violence that occurs in this country. 87% of the perpetrators were men, so it was a natural audience for me to be talking to, trying to underscore why men were key to the solution with this issue that is an epidemic, particularly when you consider 6 women per day. were dying at the hands of their significant other. That is serious. And for far too long, many people said, well, that's what that problem is behind closed doors. No, it impacts all of us. So, and because I had gone through training, going down to the domestic hotline location in Austin, Texas, where next door they had a hotline for teenagers who were caught up in the same kind of issue as well, too. I'm passionate about it. I was and continue to be. And if I could lend my voice to that, and I just talked about how men had to take responsibility if they knew somebody who was engaged in that kind of aberrant behavior with what is an epidemic with 6 women per day losing their lives, we had a responsibility. We could not remain silent. And that's what I spoke on then. So if in fact the circumstances nationally warrant that, then I will. Otherwise, I'm a correspondent or a reporter like you to just deliver the facts.
And do you think, how do you think the NFL has managed, if we go back to the issue of social justice, how do you think the NFL has managed that issue?
Certainly, and let me give Roger Goodell a lot of credit. Hey, Jeff, the NFL, not unlike many other businesses in America for the longest time, that wasn't a priority. Certainly treating people properly, but to the degree that this issue, you talk about the George Floyd situation, that was one, and I know Susan Zirinsky, the president of CBS News, she teases me about this when I remarked that there was a tectonic shift in America when that occurred. It had been going on and has been for decades, if not centuries. Let's be clear about that. That's a fact. Nobody should have to be subjected to that kind of treatment, period. It's real. Let's deal with it. Let's be truthful. But to the degree that the NFL embraced the players, acknowledging that before there may have been more of a paternalistic attitude towards it, then the players a number of players come from these communities. It behooved them to speak out and not just do as some would advocate, just shut up and dribble the basketball. That's wrong. If you are a part of a community, if you grew up in that community and you see something that is indicative of aberrant behavior, something that is tearing apart the society of that community, we are all a part of that fabric. We all have a responsibility and to execute it and to talk about it responsibly. So I'm very pleased to see that that's been embraced. And Roger Goodell truly has been a leading force in that. He and Troy Vincent, who was the highest ranking African-American at the NFL league office, number 3, executive vice president of football operations. And now you can see how many of the players have gotten involved. And to the players' credit, while many people say, hey, I just want to watch football, this is the wrong place to protest. You tell me where the right place is to protest when there is that kind of issue going on in society. You get people's attention, and hopefully the best of us will rally around that, and that's what I'm seeing. But the Players Coalition, again, comprised of players, they are now quietly and effectively, and have been for a while, going around the country to work through the system, whether it's the legislature on Capitol Hill and local jurisdictions. They're advocating on behalf of greater access to resources and education. They've got successes. If you go to their website, that is impressive. And they're doing it quietly, out of the limelight, if you will, but effectively.
It really is remarkable how today's professional athlete has learned how to use their influence and really put their money where their mouth is when it comes to social justice issues and other issues that they care about. And it's not just Black athletes, it's white athletes too, because, I was moved by Howie Long's son, who used to play for the Eagles, I believe.
Yep. Chris Long,
and Chris Long, who was one of the few white players who would take a knee, or he had his hand on the shoulder of some of his teammates on the Eagles during the anthem. But he has also gotten really involved, not only in social justice issues, but also some charities in Africa as well. So it's really remarkable how today's athlete has used their celebrity to bring change.
And Jeff, can I say thank you for bringing up Chris Long? Obviously, I know the Long family exceedingly well, having worked for 12 years as a co-host of Fox NFL Sunday. Howie Long and I would fly back from the West Coast every weekend. As a matter of fact, the first 11 weeks of the show, we would take a red eye back from California to the East Coast. We gave up on that quickly. That will make you old real quickly. But kudos to Chris Long, to Kyle Long, and to Howie Long Jr., the youngest. They learned it from their parents. Howie Long and Diane Long stayed out of it. Even when I went to do the story on Chris Long and what he was doing with his Water Boys project in Africa, drilling water wells for them, having a number of athletes. And it was awesome because it was an inclusive and an ecclesiastical effort, if you will, in terms of the folks who were involved. Chris was doing that for a number of years out of the spotlight, giving up his paycheck for a season to donate to causes that were helping to strengthen the fabric of communities around the country. And oh, by the way, the only way something is really going to be effective in terms of making significant change is if it is inclusive. It involves all of us, irrespective of your station in life, whatever hue you are, denomination. It takes all of us to do that. That's a fact of life. That's a truth. And so people like Chris Long have been doing that. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, there are a number of white ball players on that team who got involved when they heard about it happened to be a white citizen who was unfairly, improperly imprisoned, innocent, and it was proven by the Innocence Project after nearly 40 years in prison that he was convicted of something that he did not do. And they took a liking to that story. They've contributed resources. They are actively engaged with him because now he's in, I guess he must be in his 50s now, 50s, maybe in his early 60s. But there are a number of those kinds of stories that happen every week in the NFL. I was blessed to be involved with the NFL Players Association for about 8 years. And the project was called the JB Awards, recognizing players who were nominated by their team, similar to the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award, which is considered their highest award. There are so many guys who are doing that on a regular basis, who don't want any visibility and publicity, but they're meaningfully engaged like that on a daily basis. There are a number of good things. Unfortunately, it's again, that overworked word, it's the aberrant behavior of a few that garner most of the attention when overwhelmingly the players at that level are doing good, Jeff. And you talked about players who are engaged. I think about the NBA. Look at what LeBron James has done in creating a school, paying for all of the uniforms and the books, all of the technology for every one of the participants at that school, and says he's going to stay with them through college. Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors. So many folks are doing that because now that they've seen what the leaders are doing with their money, as opposed to just feasting on the lust of that kind of excess on themselves, they are putting it back into the communities. Many of them are following the lead of Magic Johnson, who's been doing that for years as well. So it's good to see that's the kind of groundswell of activity that's taking place with these athletes today.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this about you, but not only, and you mentioned this, not only did you go to Harvard, but you were drafted into the NBA. Do you remember what the starting salary was back then for a first-year player for the Atlanta Hawks, right?
Yes, sir.
What were they paying back then?
Well, let me put it in personal terms, and I won't. Well, you know what? Pete Maravich, who was a team star, and we became good friends. We both have Pistol Pete Maravich. We both had a love of the martial arts, so we would go out together to the martial arts movies or get together and talk about the martial arts and where we were, etc. So he was making $29,000 every 2 weeks, I believe it was. Man, I thought that was all the money in the world. I signed a contract for $40,000 a year, and I got a whopping bonus of probably somewhere around $2,000 to $3,000. That was my signing bonus at that time. But again, here I was trying to make it on the team. The money now is just incredible, but it also shows how successful the league has been. And obviously these guys are set for life, with that first contract because they're guaranteed money. So they're
Oh.
doing well, but it's good to see what so many of them are doing, again, following in the footsteps of the LeBron James Heavens. A junior Bridgman who played back in the day with the Milwaukee Bucks, who, you know, he is one of the most successful entrepreneurs, period. Not just amongst athletes, period. What was it, Jeff? Is it a Wendy's? I think he's got a
I think
Burger King?
Wendy's or McDonald's. He's
Yeah.
a franchise owner
Oh,
throughout
phenomenal,
Wisconsin, I
phenomenal.
think. Yeah.
So many of these guys, they understood that, and there are a number of them. Dave Bing, going back a number of years, when he developed his company, Bing Steel, supplying things to the automotive industry. So there are a number of guys who've done exceedingly well and are still doing that. They just don't get the visibility that many others do.
So you were drafted to the Hawks. You were cut before the season started?
Yes,
How
was
did that affect your life?
Well, wow. Now that's superb because it really created the work ethic that I have now, Jeff. I was drafted in the 4th round by the Atlanta Hawks. That's when they had 10 rounds of draft. But even going back to that, painful lesson for me in life was, I remember and you probably can remember the influences of your high school coach and others as well too. My high school coach, the great Morgan Wooten, who just died a couple years ago, DeMatha High School in Hyattsville, Maryland. First high school basketball coach to get into the Basketball Hall of Fame expressly, solely because of what he did at the high school level. Phenomenal. Our high school team, I wasn't playing then. They then beat the then known Lou Alcindor, the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, when his high school team had won 71 consecutive games. They came down to Maryland's Coldfield House, 12,500 fans, which was humongous back then, packed in the Coldfield House on the campus of Maryland University, a snowy night, a rematch against Power Memorial, which DeMatha had lost a year before. Our high school principal told our coach to prepare for Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, why don't you have your center use a tennis racket in the middle so the team could get accustomed in practices to shooting over the outstretched arm of the 7'2" Kareem. They beat Power Memorial by 1 point. So my high school coach told me, even after being a 2-time high school All-America, he said, JB, and to the team, there's no such thing as standing still. You're either getting better or you're regressing. That's the truth in a game of life. Well, Jeff, when I got to Harvard, sadly, resting on my laurels, complacent, and I did not work as hard to stay on top as I did to get to the top, because I should have been, talent-wise, after all of that, a first-round draft choice. But when I got cut by the Atlanta Hawks, last day of the camp, and the coach, Cotton Fitzsimmons, told me, I'm going to let you go, I knew, and Pete Maravich had told me this, Lou Hudson, the other star on that team, you can play. You just keep working hard. You're going to do it. And he cut me. And I was hurt to the max. But Jeff, when I looked myself in the mirror, I realized that I was not going to point a finger of blame at anybody else because there were 3 pointing back at me where I failed to work as hard during those 4 years in college to be prepared for the opportunity. And I vowed to never, ever allow an opportunity to pass me by for which I was ill prepared. That was my work ethic after being cut by the Hawks. The following year, Red Auerbach of the Boston Celtics, with whom I was good friends, he did invite me to his camp. I was the last player cut then. Red said, if you go overseas and develop your talent, you can play in the NBA. But my mother and father, God bless them, and worked so hard for me to be prepared for the game of life. I said, thanks, but no thanks. Let me go out here and make sure I make success of myself and for my family in the game of life. So that's what the result of that was a work ethic to take nothing for granted and to consider myself a free agent. Nothing would be guaranteed in life, only the ability to deliver excellence. That's the only thing that you could count on.
How much of your success do you attribute to this desire to achieve things for yourself? Or do you attribute it to a desire to make your parents happy, make family members happy, do things for them?
The latter is absolutely the focus. It was never about me, to accumulate things, because I found out in life those things truly are empty. It is, what are you doing to enhance the life of somebody else? That I am always a part of a team, and I wanted to make certain that I carried my load effectively. It is all about team orientation. We've all heard the expression, it takes teamwork to make a dream work. Look, in any undertaking in life, it is what the group will do and what they bring to the table that would ensure the success of the whole. And look,
Well,
I've been
let me put it
please.
this way, and I'm sorry to interrupt because I just threw, that's a softball question.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I threw you an easy question.
Okay.
I mean, who is honestly going to answer that question and say, oh, I did it all for me? Okay. So what I really want to know is, what was it about your parents that that they instilled in you growing up that sort of sets you apart from other people? I mean, you've achieved so much. Harvard, drafted into the NBA, this legendary, and I know you quibble with that word, but you have this legendary broadcasting career. And you have this longevity in this business, which is rare. And people truly like you. And I'm not just saying that because I'm interviewing you. I mean, you would walk through our newsroom and people would be, running up to you like you're their best friend. So what is it about you that your parents instilled in you that has really set you apart?
Wow. Because I got a chance to see up close and personal, or up close and personally, probably more accurately, how hard my parents worked. My father worked as a prison guard at the local prison in the Washington, D.C. area, actually in Northern Virginia. My father drove a taxi cab. And during the holidays, my father would go and be a handyman at the Avis rental car facility out at Washington National, now Reagan National Airport. My mother always wanted to stay home to be the excellent homemaker, to raise her kids properly, to inculcate us with the best. And she continued to drive home the expression, excellence is in our family. You need to model that and carry that forth. I saw my mother. She had me when she was 17 years of age. I saw her persevere. I knew back at a time when a pair of stockings cost 25 cents. Bill collectors didn't send you the bill. They'd come around, they'd knock on the door. My mother wouldn't answer the door because she didn't have the money to take care of it. She would always pay her debts. She may not have had it on time because she was taking that 25 cents, and instead of buying herself a new pair of stockings, she was providing for the 5 of us kids. When I went to DeMatha High School, a private school, private Catholic school, all boys, it cost $500 a year tuition. That was a whole lot of money back in 1966 through 69. My mother didn't have that kind of money, but the family pooled resources together. Her aunts, her good friends, they pooled resources. Thank goodness we wore uniforms so we didn't have to go out and buy clothes every week, but family members chipped in. So when I saw that excellent example of hard work and teamwork, and that my father, he would be there, my sister, who's the smartest in the family, he would be there for her graduation, or when she was debating on the debate team or whatever. They would be there for my basketball games. They were there for all 5 of us. That was the example in a 2-parent household of folks of modest means that I saw every day. So I knew it wasn't about me, and I had to set the example for my family. So that's in my DNA. And shame on me if I were to go out and say that I'm the reason for all this success. I know to the degree that I can, in lowliness of mind, esteem others more highly than myself, and to know that it is about teamwork, to make them look good, to be well prepared for my assignment so that I could ask them the most pertinent questions to pull out, so it helped to deliver information, whether it was on a humorous platform like with Phil Simms cracking up or he and Boomer going at it, or whether it was a serious undertaking working with my colleague Jeff Pegues in news. It's still all about the team.
And I'm sure our listeners, our virtual viewers, they can hear that faith is a big part of your life. And not only are you a studio host, but you're also an ordained minister.
And you know, Jeff, I don't, my good friend Tony Dungy and I, we probably debated this a lot, but I think we arrived at the same point. I know that my boss, Sean McManus, the chairman of CBS Sports, didn't hire me to proselytize. I don't go around trying to beat people over the head with the Bible. I try to live it and all of the truths that are there. And at the end of the day, if I were to distill it down to its simplest, it's all about love. That's the overriding, consistent, persistent, permeating message. It's about love. And love truly is a choice. Even when we talked about all of the issues that plague us as a country, with all the vitriol and divisiveness and acrimonious talk at the public square, in the public square, love is a choice. We can't legislate somebody to love us. It has to be there and to see that we're all better together. So when I, on the public service campaign at the head at CBS, talking about it takes all of us and to get our personal stories, do I get upset and angry and hurt and grieve with what I see going on in society? Yes, I do. Because my gosh, the old axiom, which is true, a house divided cannot stand. It won't stand. Even if I don't care how far back in history you go, there are evidences that are replete throughout that, including in the Bible, that show division will lead, or moral depravity will lead to a devolving, a breakup in society. It will. Look at the Roman Empire as an excellent example of that. So cannot we see that loving one another is truly the answer? Supporting, seeing the good. I don't know. I've not seen anywhere, and I don't care if a child comes into the world with what some will call a deformity. God did not make any rejects. Everybody has a gift. If you watch these touching commercials on TV or promos for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, Shriners Hospital, Children's Hospital, period, to see what they're doing. Every child brings a gift into life, and it behooves us to make certain we find out what that gift is, polish it, encourage them, because to the degree that kids are growing up in the hood in so many areas where they feel that they're rejects. Rejection is one of the worst things that can happen to a child, because you know what? Being rejected is like planting seeds. And if you create so many situations where children think they're rejects, all of that seed in soil will produce a bounty of nothing but rejected individuals. Zig Ziglar said it. We've heard it all these cute expressions. Failure is an event. It is not a person. Overcoming is what we see in people, and we ought to try to encourage that and let them bring out that diamond that's there that we can try to polish and add something to it, because we are better. We've got a wonderful mosaic here in this country. Yes, people say they don't see color. No, you do see color. That's the wonderful mosaic that makes up America or the globe. The question is, what do you see when you see color? Do you see the stereotype that's perpetuated by folks who are unloving or don't have a real grasp of what the truth is? Or do you see excellence in many different shapes, sizes, forms, or whatever? Because all of us together, and if we reflect that in society, then we're going to be that much better.
Yeah, this country is a melting pot. I think either some people don't want to admit that, or they don't understand what that is, but that is exactly what this country is. And frankly, on January 6th, as you know, I was covering the insurrection, but I also covered the minutes and the hours before the insurrection, where people were they were gathered in the ellipse. There were a lot of American flags. Yeah, there were some Confederate flags too, and you would hear them sort of repeating some of the phrases that the former president had been using: "Stop the steal," "It was rigged." And then I remember the moment when things turned and someone all of a sudden, walked up to our truck, our news truck, and started beating on it with a stick. It was threatening to harm us. And I had a young producer who was with me. She was outside the truck. I dragged her into the truck. And then I remember, of course, going up to the Capitol, running up to the Capitol, because people were literally climbing the walls of the US Capitol. I could not believe my eyes. And I bring this up because 2 days after that, on January 8th, it was a Friday, I had just wrapped up a live shot for the evening news and my phone rings. I didn't have caller ID on it, so I didn't know who it was. And I picked up the phone and it was you. You called me. And we'd never talked on the phone before, but you got my number and you called me even before the newscast was over. Why did you call?
Jeff, I know people hold journalists prayerfully. Many don't have high regard for it, but we're to be objective. We're to report the facts and what we see, and do our job well. But we're people as well. And I may have been wrong, but as I was watching that broadcast, and you were the intrepid reporter, simply going out and asking questions to get the flavor and feel, not imparting your opinion on anything in the way you framed the questions. You simply asked the basics of who, what, when, where, and why. And as you turned around in your professional manner to deliver the report in a very challenging circumstance and situation, I thought I discerned that you were emotional, that you were moved one way or the other by what you were saying. You were still professional, but I just thought I saw a little emotion or discerned a little emotion there, and I felt for you. And I simply called to ask the question, Jeff, how are you doing? Are you okay? So I may be wrong, and I know you're right. This is the first time ever that I've called you, and you just completed the broadcast, knowing that you've got wrap-up duties and everything else to do. But I was just concerned about you. I like to think it's the same kind of sensitivity that I use when I'm on the set in football with my colleagues, to look at them, read them, discern them, and make certain that I'm sensitive to that and can play to that or move away from that, if you will, because I'm sensitive to it. So that's what I thought I saw in you. And with respect to this country, and I would pray fervently that people understand that our hearts are genuine. They're all for unity. Yes, you know what? I don't shy away from who I am as a man of faith. And people will say, well, don't you dislike this or dislike that? You know what? You always attack the issue, not the person. Because at least I know that the word says that we are to love our enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you or persecute you. That's what we're to be about in terms of displaying love and praying for unity amongst us, even in the worst situations. Dr. King modeled that. People will quickly point to the flaws of Dr. King. Hey, King David was flawed as well, too. I don't know a perfect individual in history, human being, who was perfect. But that which they were pushing for as far as the common good, that's what I hope we'll all be about, so we can truly hear each other. I think it was Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, God bless them, who said, even given their differences politically, hey, can we sit down and reason together?
No, I think you're correct on that. I just based on what you see these days, you don't see enough of that. And frankly, over the last, 8-9 months with the pandemic, it is sports that has been this great escape. Great escape. I tell people all the time, I am so thankful for football, basketball, and golf. Because if it weren't for those three sports, I don't know what I'd be doing. I don't know what I'd be doing.
Well, let me share this with you, and because again, and I recognize sports is that great getaway. I recognize sports has often served as a platform that has helped to move the social needle forward because you got people coming from disparate backgrounds all together for one common goal with one uniform on. But let me just say this. I remember when I was announced as being the host of the NHL, the National Hockey League, on Fox. And I'm like, to my boss, David Hill, are you sure about this? He said, oh, yeah, you'll be good. We're trying to make sure we diversify the sport being included.
Oh, that was real?
Oh, no, it was absolutely true. For 2 seasons, I hosted the NHL on Fox before Susie Colbert did it, of course, who was at ESPN. Oh, yeah. So I'm introduced to the press. True story. I'm introduced to the press. And, of course, I'm the only dark licorice stick in the room. And so all the reporters are asking these questions. JB, do you know what icing is? So I explain what icing is. JB, the next question. Do you know what a 2-line pass is? So I explain what that is. Third person. JB, do you know how they substitute in hockey? I said, yes, there are line shifts. I said, fellas, why don't we just take the veneer off of your questions? I understand what you're asking. So let me be clear. No, hockey wasn't big in my neighborhood. And I understand that the only thing I have in common with the sport is the color of the puck. But I promise you, I will be an excellent ambassador for your sport. We go through the whole season. The Stanley Cup final is being hosted in New Jersey with the Devils. I forget exactly who they were playing. And this is what made me feel the best. There were a group of little white kids, probably, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of age, and they come up with this sign in their hands. And the sign said, James Brown, Godfather of Gold. Man, that was a high point. I asked him for that sign, and it's in my office at home. Godfather of Gold. So humorous story, but to say, you know what, if you give it your best effort, if you're honest and truthful at everything that you're doing, people may disagree. We'll have disagreements, but as long as we agree on the essential things, there's an expression that says, especially as it relates to the faith, in all things that are essential, there must be unity. Where there are differences, there should be latitude, but in all things, love should prevail. And that's all I'm advocating and perpetuating, if you will, as the answer to everything, Jeff. Hey, I know you won't have me on again because I'm probably preaching too much, but it's all good.
No, not at all. No, I really enjoyed our conversation. I wanted to ask you, are you making picks in terms of the Super Bowl? Who do you think?
Look, I asked Peyton Manning that today and Derek Jeter, and neither would commit to it because they've got too many friends. But the reason I don't, nor have I ever in all the years I've been blessed to cover the sport, pick a team, players take this seriously, Jeff, and they won't let you forget it. But I also recognize I'm not from the fraternity of players or ex-players, coaches, they have been there. So what I try to do is to do my job as well as I can to paint the picture of what the headlines are, what the storylines are, and to get into them and to elicit that insight from the guys who've played and or coached the game, who are my colleagues. I think we couldn't have asked for a better matchup in terms of storylines. Old Tom Brady, what he's doing after age 40, at age 43, is phenomenal. He is the GOAT. The young Patrick Mahomes, the best way to describe him is preternatural, not just in terms of talent, but his intelligence, his native skills, but he displays a calm that is beyond his years, and the team as a whole, they feed off of him. Last year, you'll appreciate this, they won the Super Bowl, but in their 3 postseason games, they were behind by double digits in each of those games. No deficit too great to be overcome in the mind of Patrick Mahomes as he encouraged all of his players. Tom Brady, as you and I talked extensively at the top, he's proven what he brings to the table in terms of his attitude being infectious and contagious, if you will. I think we've got some great storylines.
Yeah, I think you do too. And I will never forget how, in college, Patrick Mahomes was, no one really talked about him at Texas Tech. I mean, he had the tools, but no one saw him turning out to be what he's become. And it just shows you how, is it coaching that makes the difference, or is it just maturity and being in the right situation and luck?
It's all those things. Although, as you well know, as an ex-athlete, a football player yourself, we never use the word luck. We say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. You work to earn that. It's all of those things. It's having a coach like an Andy Reid, like an Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coaches there, the head coach and the offensive coordinator. Eric Bieniemy has put tons of hours in with him, but you look to maximize the strengths and the gifts that a guy brings to the table. Too many coaches I've seen over the years have a set way of doing things. This is the way we're going to do it, and they try to fit everybody into that mold. No, if you're a coach worth your medal, he or she will find out what works well for the team. What are the strengths and weaknesses of this particular team that may be different from the team 3, 4, 5 years ago, and play to that strength. That's what good coaching and motivation is all about. And Patrick Mahomes is in the perfect situation with what he has there and some guys who feed off of him. Tom Brady, one of the things that was so magnificent about what they've done in a COVID pandemic, not many team meetings before the season because of the pandemic, no preseason games. That hurts a coach who's trying to find out what kind of team he has, because usually coaches will say the first 4 games of the season, 3 or 4 games, will help me to determine what kind of team I really have. Now I can design and tactically put in plays and schemes that work for them, so that during the 8-game stretch of the season, that's called navigating the murky waters of that 8-game stretch, so that hopefully you've got momentum going into the final 4 games as you head into the postseason. Tampa Bay is an excellent example of that, because John Madden, the iconic broadcaster and coach of the the Raiders, said, JB, a championship caliber team usually only needs 1 or 2 pieces of the puzzle to put in place to go to the Super Bowl, if you will. Hey, Tampa Bay had a number of new pieces on top of the COVID environment and the impact, the lack of in-person meetings. Bruce Arians, Byron Leftwich, and Todd Bowles, the 2 coordinators there, and the rest of that coaching staff, Steve Armstrong, they've done a remarkable job to navigate some murky waters through like the first 5 games of the season. And it looked like there might be a rift between Tom Brady and Bruce Arians in terms of what was happening. They both got over that and saw the common good, and now they are on a roll. Tom Brady had a challenging second half where he threw 3 picks, interceptions against Green Bay. You know it better than me, but boy, have they overcome. So some great storylines going into this game on Sunday, 2 Sundays from now. So, yep.
Yeah, it's right around the corner. One last question, because we're playing tonight for an audience that is New York focused.
Okay.
And I wanted to ask you about the New York Giants. Do you think this is a franchise that can ever get back to a Super Bowl, at least in the next, I don't know, 5 years? Or are they headed in the right direction?
Wow, you're going to upset the New York Jets fans, who it seems like we may be overlooking, because one of my good friends is the chairman and CEO of American Express, Steve Squeri, who was a diehard Jets fan. So I'm hoping for both squads. But yes, I think the leadership is there in place. Look, the Maras, they've been around football forever and a day. They understand what the mechanics are, what the methodology is to get something in place. I'm sure Giants fans were a little disappointed, with the play at quarterback. But you know what? They're going to get over that. They're going to be fine. And I got to say, for the Jets, because you're hearing talk that seems to be getting louder, that the outstanding quarterback with the Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson, is rumored strongly that the Jets would be a destination that he'd like to be at, because he likes the new head coach, Robert Saleh, the first Muslim head coach in the National Football League, who is a phenomenal coach. What he did out there in San Francisco when they had the equivalent of 2 MASH units with injuries on their team, Jeff, you know it better than I do. They played hard every game, and they were there. If they played that hard in a game like football, which is a tough game, this guy can coach, because we saw them get to the Super Bowl before. But let me tell you something. They are a good team, no question about it. And Robert Saleh was the key reason why.
Yeah, this is going to be a really exciting offseason because you have all these coaches coaching openings. I'm interested to see if Eric Bieniemy, who is one of my contemporaries, he and I were playing college football at about the same time. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets a head coaching job. Byron Leftwich, and then all these quarterbacks who could change teams and leagues. It's going to be an interesting offseason too.
Well, and real quickly, because I know there's one head coaching job remaining out of the several that were there, and that is in Houston. Look, Eric Bieniemy, one of the enduring challenges in the NFL was in being more inclusive in terms of head coaches for sure, but even in the C-suite where diversity and inclusion would speak well. Look, Bruce Arians, head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he didn't go out trumpeting himself, talking about what he's going to do. He just went out and did it. He's the head coach of that team. He's got the two significant coordinator positions, offensive and defensive, manned by African Americans, Byron Leftwich and Todd Bowles. He's got a coordinator at the running back, Steve Armstrong. He's got two women, full-time coaches on his squad, and an Iranian, if I didn't already mention it, who is the assistant strength and conditioning coach. He just went out and did it. He didn't make a big to-do over it. He didn't seek any visibility. So the point is, even in corporate America, people say it's about the bottom line. Hey, these guys are in the Super Bowl. That is the bottom line that's going to impact the pockets of the Glazer family that owns that team positively, and they've got it with a team that is an excellent example of diversity and inclusion.
Can't wait to watch the game. Can't wait to watch the NFL today. And my friend JB, listen, thank you so much for your time. You took an hour of our questions, my questions, and some of the viewer questions. So I really appreciate you, and I wish you luck as you become the 10-time host of the Super Bowl pregame show, a trailblazer with that legendary career. And I know you don't like that word, but I do because it suits you.
Hey, Jeff, and that comes from a guy whose first NFL game, I said a running back was tackled on the 60-yard line. My producer gets in my ear, JB, go to commercial. There's no such thing as a 60-yard line. And I was told during a production meeting, don't look up at the stadium clock. It could be wrong. Look at the television monitor. It will have the accurate time. I was so shook up when my producer said there's no such thing as a 60-yard line. I compounded the mistake by looking up at the clock and said, well, we're going to step aside for a quick timeout with 8 minutes and 99 seconds left in the third period of play. We came back. My colleague covered for me. He said, just in case you thought JB didn't know what he was talking about, he wanted to see if you could make the mathematical conversion to realize he was saying 9 minutes and 39 seconds left. So I hope I didn't bore the folks there at Westport Library, and that Alex G might consider having me back at some point in the future. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Right.
And as we wrap up, I'm going to clarify too, because when I said legendary, I meant legendary. So, and you know, just as we wrap up, I think we always say it, right? Sports lessons are life lessons, and that's what you guys brought to us today. And I think we overuse or misuse the word timely. So this was a timeless discussion, and I really appreciate that. I know our audience does as well. So thank you both for that. James, I know that you were literally in your busiest time of year, so to take the time out for us really means a lot for the community, and we appreciate that. And Jeff, you know, I turned on my TV on January 6th, and you're there on the ground in, you know, reporting history and bringing history to us. And I stopped and said, man, it's cool that I get to sometimes work with that guy. So we really appreciate you too, Jeff. And I can't wait for the next one. So
hey, Alex, can I just say it was a blessing for me, and you and Jeff will have to help me remember the name. I did watch one of the shows previously with the young lady from the WNBA.
Candace Parker.
Candace Parker.
How can you forget Candace Parker?
She is awesome
in basketball. Yes. And also Charles Smith, and of course, a contemporary of mine, Dave Winfield, who, little nugget, Dave Winfield, 3-sport star, drafted by all 3 professional major sports. He was drafted by the Atlanta Hawks. I called him to see if he was going to come to Atlanta because they only had 1 spot available. He said, no, I think I can make more money in baseball. Boy, was that not ever true. And the fact that, of course, Jeff Pegues knows way too many people in intelligence for me to tell him no.
Well,
I appreciate you.
Thank you guys for making my job at a public library a really super cool job. I appreciate it. And to all of you out there watching, thank you all for being here. Stay well and stay safe. Thank you, everybody, and good night. And James will be watching on the 7th.
Thank you so much. God bless you guys.
Good night,
You
everybody.
too.